think of some funny things to say, old Darley. Hello! I was just reading ahead. Spoilers. I know all the spoilers, but you guys don't, so welcome back to another Reading Time with John. We're carrying on with our story today, Charlie in the Great Glass Elevator, written by Roald Dahl and read by moi. Moi. I want to say et toi. Et toi? Yeah? No. Unless you want to, of course. Oh. Cool. So, hope everything's okay and going well and you're enjoying the sun. My plants aren't. They're having too much sun. They're like, we want some rain. Rain. Rain is good. Anyway, let's not dally about the bush any longer. I'm allowed to say that because I made it up. Right. So, going to dive straight in. No one's currently listening at the moment, but they will be. Oh, yes. Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, Chapter 13. And let us remind you that they've just landed from being in outer space and being attacked by these big vermicious canids. And they're home, they're back in the factory, all safe and sound. Chapter 13. How Wonkavite was invented. Ooh. I'm just going to read the last line from chapter 12. And I'm going to get you out of that bed. You see if I don't. I haven't been out of this bed in 20 years, and I'm not getting out of it now for anybody, said Grandma Josephine firmly. No, me, said Grandma Georgina. You were out of it just now, every one of you, said Mr. Wonka. That was floating, said Grandpa George. We couldn't help it. We never put our feet on the floor, said Grandma Josephine. Try it, said Mr. Wonka. You might surprise yourself. Go on, Josie, said Grandpa Joe. Give it a try. I did. It was easy. We're perfectly comfortable where we are, thank you very much, said Grandma Josephine. Mr. Wonka sighed and shook his head very slowly and very sadly. Oh, well, he said. So that's that. He laid his head on one side and gazed thoughtfully at the three old people in the bed. And Charlie, watching him closely, saw those bright little eyes of his beginning to spark and twinkle once again. Ding! Ha ha! Thought Charlie. What's coming now? I suppose, said Mr. Wonka, placing the tip of one finger on the point of his nose and pressing gently. I suppose, because this is a very special case, I suppose I could spare you just a tiny little bit of... He stopped and shook his head. There's a picture of him touching his nose. What's that in the sky? Oh, bit of foliage. A tiny little bit of what? Said Grandma Josephine sharply. No, said Mr. Wonka. It's pointless. You seem to have decided to stay in bed, whatever happens. And anyway, the stuff is much too precious to waste. I'm sorry I mentioned it. He started to walk away. Hey! Shouted Grandma Georgina. You can't begin something and not go on with it. What is too precious to waste? Mr. Wonka stopped. Slowly he turned around. He looked long and hard at the three old people in the bed. They looked back at him, waiting. He kept silent a little while longer, allowing their curiosity to grow. The Oompa Loompas stood absolutely still behind him, watching. What is this thing you're talking about? Said Grandma Georgina. Get on with it, for heaven's sake, said Grandma Josephine. Very well, Mr. Wonka said at last. I'll tell you. And listen very carefully, because this could change your whole lives. It could change even you. I don't want to be changed, shouted Grandma Georgina. May I go on, madam? Thank you. Not long ago, I was fooling around in my inventing room, stirring stuff around and mixing things up the way I do every afternoon at 4 o'clock, when suddenly I found I'd made something that seemed very unusual. This thing I'd made kept changing colour as I looked at it, and now and again it gave a little jump. It actually jumped in the air, as though it were alive. What have we here? I cried, and I rushed too quickly to the testing room and gave some to the Oompa Loompas who were on duty there at the time. The one of them. Now, the result was immediate. It was flabbergasting. It was unbelievable. It was also rather unfortunate. What happened? Said Grandma Georgina, sitting up. What indeed? Said Mr. Wonka. Answer her question, said Grandma Josephine. What happened to the Oompa Loompa? Ah, said Mr. Wonka. Yes, well, There's no point crying over spilled milk, is there? I realized, you see, that I had stumbled upon a new and tremendously powerful vitamin. I also knew that if only I could make it safe, if only I could stop it doing to others what it did to the Oompa Loompa.
What did it do to that Oompa Loompa?
Said Grandma Georgina sternly. The older I get, the deafer I become, said Mr. Wonka. Do please raise your voice a trifle next time. Thank you so much. Now then, I simply had to find a way of making this stuff safe, so that people could take it without...
Without what?
Snapped Grandma Georgina. Without a leg to stand on, said Mr. Wonka. So I rolled up my sleeves and set to work once more in the inventing room. I mixed and I mixed. I must have tried just about every mixture under the moon. By the way, there is a little hole in one wall of the inventing room which connects directly with the testing room next door, so I was able all the time to keep passing stuff through for testing to whichever brave volunteer happened to be on duty. Well, the first few weeks were pretty depressing, and we won't talk about them. Let me tell you instead what happened on the 132nd day of my labours. That morning I had changed the mixture drastically, and this time the little pill I produced at the end of it all was not nearly so active or alive as the others had been. It kept changing colour, yes, but only from lemon yellow to blue, then back to yellow again. And when I placed it on the palm of my hand, it didn't jump about like a grasshopper. It only quivered, and then ever so slightly. I ran to the hole in the wall that led to the testing room. A very old Oompa Loompa was on duty there that morning. He was bald, wrinkled, toothless. He was an old fellow. He was in a wheelchair. He'd been in the wheelchair for at least 15 years. There he is. He looks a bit like a house elf. Maybe that's why J.K. Rowling got the idea. This is test number 132, I said, chalking it up on the board. I handed him the pill. He looked at it nervously. I couldn't blame him for being a bit jittery after what had happened to the other 131 volunteers.
Well, what happened to them? What did happen, eh?
Shouted Grandma Georgina.
Why didn't you answer the question instead of skidding around a bit on 2 wheels, eh?
Who knows the way out of a rose, said Mr. Wonka. So this brave old Oompa Loompa took the pill, and with the help of a little water, he gulped it down. And then, suddenly, the most amazing thing happened. Before my very eyes, queer little things began taking place in the way he looked. A moment earlier he had been practically bald, with just a fringe of snowy white hair around the sides and the back of his head. But now the fringe of white hair was turning gold, and all over the top of his head, new gold hair was beginning to sprout like grass. In less than half a minute, he had grown a splendid new crop of long golden hair. At the same time, many of the wrinkles started disappearing from his face. Not all of them, but about half, enough to make him look a good deal younger. And all of this must have given him a nice tickly feeling, because he started grinning at me, then laughing. And as soon as he opened his mouth, I saw the strangest sight of all. Teeth were growing up out from those old toothless gums, good white teeth. And they were coming up so fast, I could actually see them getting bigger and bigger. Here he is again. Yay! I was too flabbergasted to speak. I just stood there with my head poking through the hole in the wall, staring at the little Oompa Loompa. I saw him slowly lifting himself up and out of his armchair. He tested his legs on the ground. He stood up. He walked a few paces. Then he looked up at me, and his face was bright. His eyes were huge and bright as 2 stars.
Look at me,
he said softly.
I'm walking. It's a miracle.
It's Wonkavite, I said. The great rejuvenator. It makes you feel young again. It makes you young again. How old do you feel now? He thought carefully about the question. Then he said,
I feel almost exactly how I felt when I was 50 years old.
How old were you just now, before you took the Wonkavite? I asked him.
70 last birthday,
he answered. That means, I said, it has made you 20 years younger.
It has,
he cried, delighted.
I feel as frisky as a frog hopper.
Not frisky enough, I told him. 50 is still pretty old. Let us see if I can help you out a little bit more. Stay right where you are. I'll be back in a twink. I ran to my workbench and began to make one more pill of Wonkavite, using exactly the same mixture as before. Swallow this, said I, passing the second pill through the hatch. There was no hesitating this time. Eagerly he popped it into his mouth and chased it down with a drink of water. Yar! That wasn't demonstrating, that was necessary. And behold, within half a minute, another 20 years had fallen away from his face and body, and he was now a slim and sprightly young Oompa Loompa of 30. He gave a whoop of joy and started dancing around the room, leaping high in the air and coming down on his toes. "Are you happy?" I asked him.
"I am ecstatic,"
he cried, jumping up and down.
"I am happy as a horse in a hayfield."
He ran out of the testing room to show himself off to his family and his friends. Imagine that. He looked younger than his children. Anyway, never mind. "Thus was Wonkavite invented," said Mr. Wonka. "And thus was it made safe for all to use."
Well, why don't you use it on yourself then?"
said Grandma Georgina.
"You told Charlie you were getting too old to run the factory, so why don't you just take a couple of pills and get 40 years younger? Tell me that."
"Anyone can ask questions," said Mr. Wonka. "It's the answers that count. Now then, if the three of you in the bed would care to try a dose..." There's the Oompa Loompa, 50 years younger. "Just 1 minute," said Grandma Josephine, sitting up straight. "First, I'd like to take a look at this 70-year-old Oompa Loompa who is now back to 30. Mr. Wonka flicked his fingers. It says flicked his... Never mind. A tiny Oompa Loompa, looking young and perky, ran forward out of the crowd and did a marvellous little dance in front of the three old people in the big bed. 2 weeks ago, he was 70 years old and in a wheelchair, Mr. Wonka said proudly. And look at him now!
"The drums, Charlie," said Grandpa Joe. "Listen, they're starting up again."
Far away down on the bank of the Chocolate River, Charlie could see the Oompa Loompa band striking up once more. There were 20 Oompa Loompas in the band, each with an enormous drum twice as tall as himself. And they were beating a slow, mysterious rhythm that soon had all the other hundreds of Oompa Loompas swinging and swaying from side to side in a kind of trance. Then they began to chant.
"If you are old and have the shakes, if all your bones are full of eggs, if you can hardly walk at all, if living drives you up the wall, if you're a grump and full of spite, if you're a human parasite, then what you need is Wonkavite. Your eyes will shine, your hair will grow, your face and skin will start to glow, your rotten teeth will all drop out, and in their place new teeth will spout. Those rolls of fat around your hips will vanish, and your wrinkled lips will get so soft and rosy pink that all the boys will smile and wink and whisper secretly that this is just the girl they want to kiss. But wait, for that is not the most important thing of which to boast. Good looks you'll have, we've told you so, but looks aren't everything, you know. Each pill as well will give an extra 20 years to live. So come, old friends, and do what's right. Let's make your lives as bright as bright. Let's take a dose of this delight, this heavenly magic dynamite. You can't go wrong, you must go right. It's Willy Wonka's Wonkavite. Chapter 14. It's only a few pages, this one, I think. Yeah, quite short. My voice is going. Here it is! Wait, I didn't tell you what the chapter was called. Chapter 14, Recipe for Wonkavite. Let's carry on. Here it is, cried Mr. Wonka, standing at the end of the bed and holding high in one hand a little bottle. The most valuable bottle of pills in the world. And that, by the way, he said, giving Grandma Georgina a saucy glance, is why I haven't taken any myself. They are far too valuable to waste on me. He held out the bottle over the bed. The three old ones sat up and stretched their scrawny necks, trying to catch a glimpse of the pills inside. Charlie and Grandpa Joe also came forward to look. So did Mr. and Mrs. Bucket. The label said, Wonkavite. Each pill will make you younger by exactly 20 years. Caution! Do not take more than the amount recommended by Mr. Wonka. There you go. Although it's backwards, you see what I mean? They could all see the pills through the glass. They were brilliant yellow, shimmering and quivering inside the bottle. Vibrating is perhaps a better word. They were vibrating so rapidly that each pill became a blur and you couldn't see its shape. There he is, holding it up to the oldies. You could only see its colour. You got the impression that there was something very small but incredibly powerful, something not quite of this world, locked up inside them. and fighting to get out.
They're wriggling,
said Grandma Georgina.
I don't like things that wriggle. How do we know they won't go on wriggling inside of us after we've swallowed them? Like those Mexican jumping beans of Charlie's I swallowed a couple of years back. You remember that, Charlie?
I told you not to eat them, Grandma.
Oh, they went on jumping about inside me for a month,
said Grandma Georgina.
I couldn't sit still.
If I'm going to eat one of those pills, I jolly well want to know what's in it first, said Grandma Josephine. I don't blame you, said Mr. Wonka, but the recipe is extremely complicated. Wait a minute, I've got it written down somewhere. He started digging around in the pockets of his coat-tails. No, I know it's here somewhere, he said. I can't have lost it. No, I keep all my most valuable and important things in these pockets. The trouble is, there's such a lot of them. He started emptying the pockets and placing the contents on the bed. A homemade catapult, a yo-yo, a trick fried egg made of rubber, a slice of salami, a tooth with a filling in it, a stink bomb, a packet of itching powder. It must be here. It must. He kept muttering. I put it away so carefully. Aha, here it is. He unfolded a crumpled piece of paper, smoothed it out, held it up, and began to read as follows. Recipe for making a Wonkavite. Take a block of finest chocolate weighing 1 ton, or 20 sackfuls of broken chocolate, whichever is the easiest. Place chocolate in very large cauldron and melt over red-hot furnace. When melted, lower the heat slightly so as not to burn the chocolate, but keep it boiling. Now add the following in precisely the order given, stirring well all the time and allowing each item to dissolve before adding the next. Are you ready? The hoof of a manticore, the trunk and the suitcase of an elephant, the yolks of 3 eggs from a whiffle bird, a wart from a warthog, the horn of a cow, it must be a loud horn, the front tail of a cockatrice, 6 ounces of sponge from a young slime scraper, 2 hares and 1 rabbit from the head of a hippocampus, the beak of a red-breasted wilbatross, a corn from the toe of a unicorn, the 4 tentacles of a quadrupus, the hip and the poe and the pot of a hippopotamus, the snout of a procopper, the mole from a mole, the hide and the seek of a spotted wangdoodle, the whites of 12 eggs from a tree squeak, the 3 feet of a snozzwanger, if you can't get 3 feet, 1 yard will do, the square root of a South American abacus, it's very important you get these right, the fangs of a viper, it must be a windscream viper, the chest and the drawers of a wild grout. When all the above are thoroughly dissolved, boil for a further 27 days, but do not stir. At the end of this time, all liquid will have evaporated, and there will be left in the bottom of the cauldron only a hard brown lump about the size of a football. Break this open with a hammer, and in the very centre of it you will find a small round pill. This pill is Wonkavite!
I want one.
But then that would make me 7 years old. And then I'd have to go through school again. Oh, nah, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. I haven't got a t-shirt. Never mind. Right then, you'll have to find out tomorrow what happens to the oldies when they take their pills. If indeed they do. No spoilers from me. Honest Indian. Right. See you tomorrow at 5:30. Hope you enjoyed yourself. Take care. Stay well.